Morning.
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 Morning, folks. I'm just in an Uber on my way to somewhere in Vegas, so I'm going to hand things off to Amy.
Somewhere in Vegas. That sounds like a name of a movie.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Isn't it a little early to be in an Uber?
I've got a big cutover with a client in a couple of minutes. So
Amy,
you are now host, Amy.
Okay, got it. Yes, Joe.
I realized when I woke up this morning that I'd forgotten to send the Zoom coordinates to our speakers this morning. I sent it to them. One of them got it, and I can't seem to find the other one. So I'm hoping.
I'm here.
I'm going to try to phone this number that I've got here for him. I mean, I presume when he opens to get it, the one I sent him, he did a practice with my Zoom yesterday. I
Right.
hope he doesn't think that's the Zoom to go to. So
Well, we do have a guest on. I don't know who it is, though.
is it Peter or Bill?
Me,
Who's me?
Bill Empey.
Oh, Bill. Perfect.
I'm here.
Is that Bill?
Yep. I'm
Oh,
just
hey, Bill.
changing
So you got my email this morning?
I do.
I'm so sorry.
No idea.
Oh, there you are. Yeah, I'm really sorry because I realized
No, I
wrote
have.
it. I sent you my own Zoom, which is useless. So I sent, there you go. And Peter, I woke up this morning.
Yeah, no, I got it.
Okay, thank you.
Why is my thing not on?
Gotta
Maybe I can
remember
just
I'm
try
hosting.
sharing my screen now. Will we have a minute?
Sure.
Can I try that? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Mhm. Good morning, Peter.
Morning, guys.
Oh, yeah, that worked, Bill.
See the screen okay?
All good.
Unshared.
Bill and Peter, apologies for not sending the Zoom until now. I usually do it well in advance.
Oh, it's okay.
I'm getting old.
I can relate to that.
Yeah, there you
We
go.
all can.
Too much chocolate milk.
I know. Have you finished yours yet?
Oh, I only had like that much because I can't. But Len and Lucas really liked it.
Yeah, it's great. Ours is in the fridge, and we just, every time we walk by the fridge, we open it up and have a swig. It's so great to drink milk out of a bottle, especially when it's cold chocolate milk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
See?
rarely drink milk, but that, and this is like Homo Jersey, and it's so good. My God.
Amy, my apologies. I may have to leave the meeting early. Okay, so sorry.
That's all right.
Darn, I met your brother on Sunday at the Rib Fest.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Are you on your way to that party?
No, I was volunteering at the Rib Fest, and he was
I was
there.
blaming him for the party. I said people heard about the rib fest. The lady had a big party to have the cocktail party portion. So, but there was a lot of the ribbers. People went to the ribs, went up to that party afterwards.
There you go.
Steve, are you hosting again?
Pardon me?
I shouldn't be, Amy. So
I think you are, though.
okay, I'll try and fix that.
Because I'm not letting these people in. Somebody is.
That's me then. I don't know why it made me host again.
You in Vegas, Steve?
I am done. Yep.
So early start.
It is an early start. Yeah.
How's the weather there today?
It was 97 yesterday, so not too bad.
Oh, that's nice.
Too bad.
It's a dry heat. That's good.
Yeah, last week it was 115, they say, so.
Wow.
That's hot.
But you're inside all the time anyway, aren't you?
Pretty much. Yep. Pretty much.
This meeting is being recorded.
All right, Amy, I'll try and hand it back to you.
Joe, how was Whitby's Rib Fest anyway?
It was great. I
Was
mean,
it-
what the part I was at was great. The one thing that really helped them, apparently, according to, trying to remember, Peter Gorham, who I was working with, they had music playing, which really, really helped. It just helped people who had their windows open, and it helped volunteers, and everybody sort of kept everybody moving and in a good mood. So he said they didn't have it on Friday, and it was horrible. It ended up being really boring. And then they put the music on, and everybody became a big party.
Derek said they did really well though. They had a lot of it went real smooth. The drive.
Oh yeah, it was really smooth, and they had a huge turnout, and I don't know how much money they made, but I was at the front, the front desk, or I was at the entrance, and cars just kept streaming through.
He said they did $20,000 in sponsorships, and he thinks at the end of the day they may be around 40.
That's great.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. I don't know what the venue cost them, if it cost them anything, or it was just donated by, it was on the Go lot. So
I don't think they paid for that, but
Yeah, was it on the Go lot or was it on the Iroquois Park?
No, Go lot.
I wonder if we could do this.
I think it was the Go lot. I mean, it was.
Yeah, he told me it was the Go lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did they have to pay for any security or any police?
I didn't see any security there at all.
There's no booze, so
Okay, so
It cost them $500 for the site. Initially, they were going to get it for nothing, but then, no, $500. Security wise, the only security that was there was during the night.
Hi, Dave.
So I think it was the Ribbers that actually provided that
Oh,
security.
not too bad.
But the,
Call me back in maybe
the-
an hour or two.
All right.
the money they made, the indication I got from them was it's a hell of a lot easier made money than it was to do the real Rib Fest.
yeah, sounds like it.
The big difference is the amount of pleasure that a real Rib Fest gives the community. You cannot measure the value.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. I think, Steve, you're still host, so I'll just let you carry on until we figure that out. It's, oh, Sammy, sorry. Cat freaking out. Sammy. Okay, so good morning, everybody, and welcome to July 20th Zoom meeting for the Bowmanville Rotary Club. I want to welcome our guests this morning. We have Bill Empey and Peter Menzies, who will be more formally introduced a little later, and Doriana is joining us from our summer squad. Hi, Doriana. So she'll be giving us an update on what's going on with them a little later. So welcome to everybody, and a toast to Rotary International.
Toast.
Very international.
And to service above self.
Service above self.
Service above self.
Our land acknowledgement. We'd like to acknowledge that here in Bowmanville, we are on the territory covered by the Williams Treaty, and that this land is the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation. We offer our gratitude to Indigenous peoples for their care of the land and their teachings about our earth. Fred Mandrick, you have our invocation this morning. You're muted, Fred. Now you're muted. Fred? Fred,
Yeah, I'm there.
there you go.
Okay, we got it. Just a second here. Talking to two people at once. Good. Okay. Just to start off with, an invocation is a traditional prayer for the support, counsel, or indulgence of an almighty power upon the works of a body of people, such as a Rotary Club. In preparing today's invocation, I was reminded that several men of science, including Ben Franklin, Albert Einstein, and Stephen Hawking, all believe in the presence of God, particularly as manifested in the remarkable nature or natural order of the world. So today I offer this prayer. Let us bow our heads. Lord of the universe, you have given most of mankind a strong desire to do good, to be honest, to serve others, and to faithfully fulfill their obligation to their neighbors. Help us as Rotarians and humans do good. Help us as Rotarians and humans to be most honest and ethical in all our dealings. Help us as Rotarians and humans to serve others. Help us as Rotarians and humans to faithfully fulfill our obligations as neighbors to our community, our nation, and the world. Amen. That was submitted by Joseph D. Coons, Bellingham, Washington. I met him at a conference.
Thank you, Fred. Pauline, I'm sure we have some birthdays. I don't know about anniversaries.
Yes, it's a big week for birthdays, President Amy. First up is Ellie Brooks, celebrating on the 21st, and also Peter Kennedy celebrating on the 21st. Then on the 23rd, the best daughter in the world is having a birthday. Also, President-elect Rachel is having a birthday on Friday. And on Saturday, Chuck Catron. Chuck actually turns 92. I don't think he'd mind me telling you that, but Chuck's 92 on Saturday. And then Steve Code, long time no see, Steve. Steve's got a birthday on Monday. So a happy birthday, Rotarians. Enjoy your birthday and have a fabulous year.
No anniversaries?
No anniversaries. Oh, we do have a service above self. Lisa Tamblin, I don't think she's on the call, but Lisa has had 1 year of service above self. So congratulations, Lisa.
Very good. Okay, Leanna, where's Leanna? Oh, there she is. Leanna is going to introduce our guests for us.
I'm just going to explain a bit what HIP is. HIP is the group that we're talking about today, stands for Honoring Indigenous Peoples, and is an independent nonprofit that works towards social change by inspiring Indigenous and non-Indigenous relationship building. While HIP has a strong relationship with Rotary, HIP includes a diverse group of Indigenous and non-Indigenous supporters comprising of communities, schools, faith groups, businesses, and other organizations. I encourage you to look at their website. It is awesome and full of education and inspiration, lots of resources. I'll quote from one of the members, "We walk together to forge a new path." Perrin Mackenzie, a Cree Métis and HIP board member, said this. I don't want to take up too much time before I introduce. So to sum up what the HIP's initiative and vision and mission statements are, I'll quote from their website. Our vision is that all Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples work together, interconnected and interdependent for the benefit of future generations. Our mission is to catalyze societal change by inspiring Indigenous and non-Indigenous relationship building, strengthening community well-being, and advancing the next generation of leaders. Today, I'm honored to introduce our speakers, two HIP coordinators from District 7070, Bill Empey and Peter Menzies. They're accomplished men, and these quick introductions don't do them justice at all. Bill Empey has been a member of the Rotary Club of Toronto since 1991. He's a Paul Harris Award winner and has served twice on the club board and the Rotary Club of Toronto's Charitable Foundation Board. He has, since 2015, been a member and has served as chair of the Indigenous Service Committee. Bill has Bill has developed connections with Toronto Indigenous groups, often in association with HIP. And Bill looks forward to getting to know Rotarians across District 770. Dr. Peter Menzies is a member of the Sagamok Anishinaabe First Nation and a social worker, focusing with a private practice, and he's focusing on Indigenous mental health, child welfare, and homelessness. And in 2018, he was given a Lifetime Achievement Award by the Ontario Association of Social Workers. Bravo. He's also a member of the Whitby Sunrise Rotary Club and much more. And I'll let them take it away, Bill.
Thank you, Leanna, for the introduction, and President Amy and Joe Solway for the opportunity to present this morning. We're delighted to be here, and I want to spend a little bit of time talking about HIP and answering your questions. I'm now going to try, hopefully, to share my screen. And, how are we doing? Can you see the screen there, the PowerPoints?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna get a different display here. Can everybody see the screen okay?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, I wanted to spend some time talking about HIP, and in particular about the approach that we've developed to develop partnerships between the Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. For us, the starting point is building a mutual respect between the two groups through education first and then action. So we've developed a program and a network that's designed to implement this, and I just want to share those with you this morning. We think that there's a natural fit between Rotary and First Nations communities. The core values between the two are actually quite remarkable. Now I'm going to start with Rotary, but that's pretty familiar to you. Just some of the features of Rotary that I think work well when we try to reach out and partner with First Nations communities: our focus on peace, on clean water, on education. You can see too that the size and the scope of Rotary is really, really links up quite well with First Nations. I should also begin by saying that while we're going to talk mostly about what's happening in District 7070, HIP has been expanding, interest has been growing, not just all across Canada, because we truly do have HIP involvement in almost every province, but now internationally, Australia and some in the United States, there's some interest in duplicating the HIP process. So, for example, just to give you some sense of how the fit works, there are 720 Rotary clubs in Canada, 633 First Nations communities. The opportunity of building bridges between these two groups to us seems to be at hand, and is something that we want to do. The Indigenous people. You've probably heard the term Turtle Island. It's how Indigenous people understand North America, and in fact, their sense of North America and using the turtle as a symbol for it fits really beautifully with the map. But there's a lot to learn about First Nations communities for non-Indigenous people. In our history that we're taught in schools, and I think for most of us, we know actually very little about the history of the First Nations. It extends, of course, back thousands of years before settlers arrived here in North America. At this point, there are 1.6 million First Nations Indigenous people in Canada, and they really need to be broken up into three groups. There's the Métis Nation, the Inuit, and the First Nations groups. They're very distinctive. There's 52 different nations, there's over 50 languages spoken, and they have some unique history. I think it's useful at one point to talk about their history in terms of Canada. For example, over 7,000 First Nations men served in World War I, World War II, and the Korean War. That was 1/3 of the population of First Nations people between the ages of 18 and 45. They were very actively involved. And it's interesting and symptomatic, I think, that in fact, only status Indians were actually recorded and recognized for their service with the Canadian Armed Forces. At the core, Indigenous people believe in a balance with nature, and they believe in a focus on community, and that they have in common with Rotary. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. All of this is on the website, and I really do encourage you to visit it. There's a lot of information there. But history is where we start. And history, told through the eyes of Indigenous people, is very different from non-Indigenous history. For example, when settlers first arrived in North America back in the 1600s, they would never have survived here if it wasn't for the assistance of the First Nations and Indigenous people who met them when they first arrived. I have a remarkable story from my ancestors that I'd like to share with you. My ancestors were refugees from Germany who first went to England, where they were being held in very difficult conditions. A Mohawk chief was in London in the early 1700s, saw the plight of these people, and he offered them, the refugees from Germany, land in the Hudson Valley in New York. So my ancestors actually were invited here by a Mohawk chief and given the land that they first lived on. After a generation, they moved up to the Mohawk Valley where they began buying land from the Mohawk people. And it turns out that in many cases, they cheated the Indigenous people in that process. So even the early history is quite remarkable in terms of the generosity and the caring and the trust that Indigenous people offer to us. We need to build respect now that spans and gets over some of that history. So the recent history is a different story, of course. We've been trying now for many years, for at least 20, 30, 40, 50 years, to understand First Nations and be reconciled to them, including the reconciliation of our history. We're guided in this, for example, by the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. That was introduced back in 2007. Canada is still working at introducing it, but we are making progress. HIP was formed in 2014. And in fact, it just preceded the release of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and reports and the calls to action. And really, it seems to me that was a turning point in the sense that the attention of non-Indigenous Canadians through that report got intensely focused on the Indigenous community, and really it served as a guidepost, and it certainly helped to create the interest that HIP, I think, often taps into. So for us, for HIP, it's about a partnership, and that's represented in many ways in terms of how HIP is organized and how it works. This is the HIP logo, and what you can see here is some of the ingredients that form the partnership. So the board of HIP, and indeed everything we do, tries to incorporate diversity across many different dimensions. Geographically, like I said, we're dispersed all across Canada, and in fact, reaching out now to Australia and to the United States. The HIP board and HIP representation is half Rotarian, half Indigenous people. The 50-50 split is reflected everywhere, and we also work to sustain the same partnership and split between men and women. So this shows up, for example, in the HIP board. Half of the board is Indigenous, half non-Indigenous, half men, half women. And it's representative from all across Canada. In fact, just recently, Chris Snyder, the chair of HIP, welcomed a new co-chair, a woman from the First Nations. So partnership in governance, partnership in everything that we do, that's essentially what HIP is all about. Here you can see the membership of HIP in terms of the districts. Now, each district, like 7070, has a HIP coordinator. Peter Menzies and I share that task for District 7070. And our job, and the job of the people who you see listed on the map here, is to encourage, is to help build the relationships, is to help you, your club, and many other clubs as your interest grows and as you want to learn more about the First Nations community and how you can work with them. And you can see here, in fact, how HIP is extended into Australia. And of course, many of the Rotary districts include US clubs as well. So I really appreciate reading our mission statement and our vision. Let me just repeat them so that you can understand. I mean, it really is the case that these motivate and guide us. Our vision is that all Indigenous and non-Indigenous people work together, interconnected and interdependent for the benefit of future generations. And our mission is to catalyze social change by inspiring Indigenous and non-Indigenous relationship building, strengthening community well-being, and advancing the next generation of leaders. Now, I want to talk a little bit about how we're actually going to do that and how we're actually actively involved in creating opportunities to make all of that possible. But at the core of the matter, we need to begin by developing mutual respect. As I go through some of the steps that we are working with, I think it's really useful to draw a parallel with the Rotary four-way test. Because again, it was natural in terms of developing our work with First Nations community, it was natural to build in values that are shared between Rotary and the Indigenous community. So we begin by building awareness and by building learning. We want to start off by making sure people understand the history and of the relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people in terms of, is it the truth? One of the ways that I find it particularly important to work on this is to talk about stereotypes, to understand how the non-Indigenous community often characterizes the Indigenous community with stereotypes and with images that simply aren't the truth. And so our task is to dig down and look carefully and see where the stereotypes, where our images, where our understanding of First Nations people is just a stereotype, not the truth. Just one example, actually, maybe I'll get to that in just a minute. So the next step is building relationships, getting to know each other, building relationships of respect, building relationships that are built on goodwill and trust. Again, a key part of the Rotary four-way truth. Finally, walking together. What can we do together that's fair for everyone and beneficial to all concerned? And so I want to give you some specific examples of actually how we're putting together actions that make that happen. To start, there's lots of ways that your group, and indeed many of you may have already taken these first steps to understand, just to get to know a little bit about Indigenous culture, get to know firsthand how they celebrate and how they enjoy, for example, their spirituality. One of the things I really recommend is going to powwows. They're wonderful. They're delightful opportunities to really see Native people and understand in a wonderful way, dancing with them at powwows to understand their culture. HIP has developed something that we call cultural safety education. This is a program. It's a 4-hour program that we've developed with a group called First People. It's a historical review, a historical introduction to Indigenous people from all three, from the Métis, from the Inuit, and from the First Nation point of view. There's an opportunity to listen to elders talking about their experience of history. And it's an opportunity to really get to understand the group. And we strongly recommend this cultural education as a starting point for non-Indigenous people who want to take a chance, want to reach out and meet with the Indigenous community. Of course, there's lots of other ways that you can get involved. I'm happy to help you organize them, and certainly you're welcome to look at our site for more ideas. One step further, again, lots of opportunities to get to know people. One of the things that I've discovered as I've been getting to know the clubs in 7070, the second point that you see in the middle in the middle bullets here, the idea of putting up an Indigenous heritage plaque in Rotary parks and trails. A lot of the clubs have Rotary parks that they've been caring for years, and many are taking advantage of that just as a place to put up a plaque to honor, as we do in our land acknowledgement, to honor the Indigenous people who are part of our community. A word about the Change the Narrative event. Some of you may have seen, and I certainly recommend, a TV documentary called First Contact. It's available on TVO. It's a documentary, actually 2 seasons of a documentary, where you get to see 6 non-Indigenous Canadians who, how can I say, they're invested, you could say, in some of the stereotypes that I was speaking about, and they're in this documentary taken across Canada to actually meet with Indigenous people, and it's really quite moving to see how the relationships build and how the stereotypes are replaced by a really deep and quite moving relationship. We have a way, HIP's organized a way of organizing an opportunity to watch this documentary, maybe one episode of it, at the same time have a discussion, a panel discussion with Indigenous people, so that you can get a firsthand sense of how that documentary really represents the changing nature of the relationship. And of course, you can visit Indigenous communities. There's always opportunities to do that, and we certainly encourage it. Now, let me move on to, in fact, the most current and maybe the most important and certainly the most exciting opportunity. This is the Youth to Youth Engagement Program. And I want to talk a little bit more about that. This is a new program. Actually, it was there was a number of trips were organized that brought together young non-Indigenous and Indigenous students, one that went up to the Yukon, as a trial to see how it would work if we took young people, because they are, after all, really what we should be focusing on, and introduced groups of Indigenous and non-Indigenous young people and just let them go off, work together, play together, be outside together, and learn together. And it's worked wonderfully. The Youth to Youth program has been launched now. Our hope is that we'll actually have youth to youth engagement events all across Canada in the coming years. And so I'm going to tell you about one youth to youth event that we're actually working on right now. It's an event that will bring together 25 Indigenous and 25 non-Indigenous youth from high school, from grades 9, 10, and 11. And it'll help them build relationships. It'll help them with cultural awareness. Elders will be at the event. They'll actually be teaching all different kinds of Indigenous practices that are in the outdoor. And there will be a focus on the environment, and in particular, on the Indigenous focus on the environment and how it should be cared for. You can participate in this, and in fact, I want to encourage you to. The specific event is for youth from grades 9, 10, and 11. It's meant for District 70 and 7070 and 7010, the Williams territories, for youth from them, and we want to encourage you to find youth in your community who you think might be interested in participating. It's going to happen from October 8th to October 10th at Camp Kawartha. And we sent out an appeal. I think your club has probably seen one. And there's 2 opportunities that you have here that I'd like to encourage you to think about. One is sponsorship support. The cost of the program is $750 per student. That covers all of their time at Camp Kawartha, their meals, and some wonderful opportunities to take place in activities with elders and with Indigenous youth. But the most important thing right now is applications. We need to gather applications from young people, and we're reaching out all across the 2 districts to ask for people to reach out to youth and to encourage them to apply. There's more information on the website. In fact, the actual application is on the website. So if you know of young people, or if you know of groups that can introduce this to young people, Rotaract clubs, for example, I would really appreciate if you could let me know about that. Our priority right now is reaching out to the youth, getting them excited, getting their applications in, getting the group ready for October. A great chance to really get to know, and for young people to really get to know the First Nations community. So, Peter, I'm not sure if I've missed something that you might want to comment on or to add. And at this point, I think I'd like to ask for some questions.
No, I think questions would be fine. Just to recognize that there are a lot of issues going on within Canada regarding First Nations people in terms of racism and discrimination, you know, and all that stuff you've been hearing about on the news. For example, the Ryerson statue being torn down. Well, I was there watching that event, and some of the comments were pretty telling of the division between Indigenous people and non-Indigenous people. And so when you hear or read comments like, go back to where you came from, we don't want you here, it's pretty telling that there is a division of some people or Indigenous communities in regard to non-Indigenous people. Understandably, it makes a lot of sense because they are the first inhabitants of this land. And unfortunately, in terms of economic status and political status and everything else, they're at the bottom of the barrel. So you can see why there's protest. It's like if you're from Germany, Bill, and if the Indigenous people went over to your country and started to take over and change your language and change the way you believe in stuff and put all your kids in special camps and things like that, eventually your race is eventually going to get upset. And so it's the same thing here in Canada. People are upset. People have a lot of memories. Memories don't go away. So when you hear names like Ryerson or being changed, or you look at statues of John A. Macdonald being torn down, if you look at the Queen Elizabeth statue getting red paint all over it, for a non-Indigenous person, they might think law and order, this is part of our heritage, and that I can see. But from an Indigenous perspective, I can also see that those statues and names are honoring oppressive, people. Like, so it's trying to get both communities eye to eye, recognizing that, and I don't know if people like to hear this, and recognizing that the Aboriginal population is the fastest growing population in Canada. It's the fastest growing population in terms of going to universities and colleges, and it will become a political power. And it may challenge Ottawa, and it may challenge the province. But what's left with us is, how do we want that challenge to be? Do you want the challenge in partnership, or do you want the challenge through whatever the means the challenge would take? Like when I worked in Northern Ontario, and when I hear people talking about having their own driver's license, their own passports, their own birth certificates, maybe we should separate Northern Ontario from Ontario and call it a different land base, people get a little nervous. They don't understand, and they say, oh, wow, this is Ontario, this is Canada, we should all be in the same boat, together. But unfortunately, in reality, it doesn't work that way. It's a totally different world. So HIP is trying to get both worlds to see eye to eye, but it's good to see eye to eye. So when the Indigenous people start to gain momentum in terms of what is rightfully theirs, that the people who have been through the HIPS program would have a better understanding of what's going on and where Canada is going. I believe from what we see today of Canada, most of us will be probably gone by then, there's going to be a new framework of working relationships with First Nations people in terms of government, in terms of land, in terms of a whole bunch of stuff. And so HIP is trying to balance us into understanding where First Nations people are coming from. Yes, it's okay to go to powwows and it's okay to visit communities, but it's also important to get engaged, to see what's really going on. And this is where I become more political than HIPs, is that I believe that when I was at the Ryerson protest, there were a lot of non-Indigenous people who were in support of what was going on. When you walk on the streets of Toronto and you see the thousands of people marching, you see a lot of non-Indigenous people supporting what is going on. So yeah, so it's okay to go to powwows, it's okay to visit communities, but it's also advisable to be aware of the political world that's happening with us. For example, like the Roman Catholic Church is a clear example where they've been very neglectful in their obligations towards First Nations communities, their role within the residential schools. Like the church doesn't talk about the money that they made off the residential schools, the land that they got from the residential schools. They don't talk about that. What they talk about is, well, you know, we have to meet and talk, right? Meanwhile, when you read the papers, you find that every time the Truth and Reconciliation, committee tried to get documents from the various church groups, the Anglicans were quite freely giving the documents, the Presbyterians were quite freely giving the documents. But when it came to the Catholic Church, what they did was they brought all their lawyers to stop the process. So it's good just to understand the politics, whether you agree with it or if you don't agree with it. That's up to you, but it's good to know what's going on. Anyways, I said my piece. So HIPS is trying to get both worlds to see eye to eye on things. Miigwech.
Joe, do you have a question?
Joe.
Yeah, yes, I do. Let me just take this off here. Yeah, Peter, you work with a number of Indigenous, First Nations, Indigenous people.
Yes.
But you are also yourself, you have your own life and your own background. How have you experienced the last few months with the finding of these remains, I guess they are, these unmarked graves? How have you experienced this? Because you've been through your own story. Your family was in residential schools like so many, and so you must have experienced this. How's it been for you?
It's been, traumatic. I mean, like you read it and you watch it, and it brings up a lot of memories. It brings a lot of hatred up, right, towards the other cultural group that did that towards you. So it's not all rosy and peak between non-natives and natives, I said, because there's still a lot of damage that still needs to be dealt with. So when I go to Northern Ontario, which I'm going in 2 more weeks for a period of 3 weeks, I'm dealing with a lot of survivors of residential schools. Like I came back from October, when COVID was going on, but I was up there working with survivors of the residential school, and very painful memories, a lot of anger. A lot of them are trying to figure out how to forgive and who to forgive and why not to forgive. And so all these questions are so real, and you sit there and you engage them through their painful journey. And so when they're being constantly bombarded by graveyard sites and things like that, they also talk about some resident schools that they've been in that have been very traumatic, like the sexual abuse, the physical abuse, being abandoned from their family. And it's like you said, Joe, my family started going to residential schools in 1807, and my mother and father went. So you can see the line of damage that was done with my family. And then I was placed in an institution for a good 10 years. And then I was talking with Joe yesterday, and I got double whammy because I went right into children's aid right after that. So it took me a long time to reconcile what the non-Indigenous community did to me and to my family and to my community. So when I go to my community and I see all the pain and suffering, of course you want to blame the non-natives for what they did. And so it's important, like I said, Joe, and to the club, is yeah, it's okay to dance and things like that, but it's important to also recognize that there's another world out there where people are in pain, people are demonstrating, people are marching, people want their land back, people are demanding. This is their time. And as I said, it's the fastest growing population. It's the fastest going to universities and college. So how do we want to handle this? And so, yeah, so the pain is there. It's pretty well out in the open. I'm expecting when I go up there for 3 weeks, I'll be hearing a lot of it. I already know that I'll be dealing with circles of residential school survivors, as well as second generation, survivors, because it just doesn't stop with the residents. It actually continues on. It's called intergenerational trauma. So it gets passed on. And they're full of anger. And so when you look at the prison systems and the child welfare systems, you have a lot of First Nations people in these institutes that are angry. Yeah, people would say, oh, they have AFSD, they have ADHD, or they have this, like they try to do some clinical thing about it. But when you sit down with them and engage with them from a therapeutic point of view, yes, you do recognize they may have a little bit of schizo or a little bit of ADHD, but when their words come out and they say, fuck the white man, excuse my language, screw the white man, I want to kill a white man if I ever get mad, you begin to see that there's still anger. And we as Rotarians or wherever we're from, we have to find a balance, because, people don't forgive. And when they talk about these graves, unmarked graves, I mean, how many kids did I see leave and I never seen again? I don't know. I don't know what happened to them. I never seen them again. So it's like, it's trying to find that balance, and that's the hard part. And so there's a group of people that are polarized, that they want complete, give our land back, go back home where you belong. When you look at the Ryerson, and then you look at the middle of the road, there's people like me saying, well, let's try to balance it out, recognizing Aboriginal people are going to get their land back. They are going to get more powerful. Then there's the passive group that wants to do all the soft stuff and blend in with society. So you're really polarized.
The fine line. Wayne, I see you. So I think we'll see if Wayne has a question, and then I think we'll need to move along, gentlemen. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
My question is this: Turtle Island, is that geographically all of Canada or all of North America?
North America, generally, that's what it's referred to.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
This could be a conversation that,
oh God, yes.
And I appreciate, Peter, that your comments about it being such a fine line and trying to bring balance, and just when you say Northern Ontario, where is Northern Ontario for you?
Some people talk about far south of Sudbury. Some people talk about north of Sudbury. So it's just like to even talk in the 90s, like Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Northern Ontario shall form one country, because it's the biggest population group is in Saskatchewan and Manitoba.
My husband's family finds it funny when people talk about Northern Ontario and they consider that Barrie. That's not Northern Ontario.
No. But it's a very fluid area that we're in, And it's up to us as Rotarians or as people to find that balance. I mean, look what's going on with, that happened in, South Africa, right? With their apartheid and all that. Look what's going down in the States with Black Lives Matter. I mean, we can't sugarcoat this stuff. Like
No.
we have to be really cognitive that we're on their land. It's a brutal history. And you might go to a First Nation and you might get stopped and told, what are you doing here? Right?
Yeah.
I went to one community and they didn't know me yet. And I was going into their treatment facility and a police car followed me. And he didn't see me, but when I came out, he said, oh, it's one of us. Then he started speaking Ojibwa and I started talking back to him. And then I told him, and he said to me, yeah, we get a lot of visitors here that don't belong here. So it depends what community you go to, right? It's really like it's trying to reach out and support Native agencies and support this program, which is very important with the kids, right? Like support it as best you can in terms of making a club sponsorship, because it's like Bill said, this is the next generation. And where do we go from here? It's like when I go to First Nations communities and I think I'm going to retire in this community and there's a nice, house there that I'm going to have. And I think about my caregivers. Well, who's going to care for me? Right? So it's an interesting world. So I would strongly suggest that you find a couple kids that would, benefit from this program, that could be good messengers, like kids that will go out there and give the message out to like other kids, like, wow, this is a great program. This is fantastic. And let that ball roll, because if that ball doesn't roll,
No, I appreciate that. And I hope that our youth committee, will certainly look into we've got 4 great high schools here in Bowmanville that, so hopefully we can get involved with that. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
You're
And
more than
nice
welcome.
meeting you, Joe.
You're more than welcome to stay on the call.
I do remember you.
You're more than welcome to stay on the call, gentlemen. We do have to move. We have a classification of one of our newest members.
Oh, okay, no, I'll go.
Oh no, you can stay.
You stay. He's got a great story to tell.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So thank you very much, gentlemen. Andrew and Peter, I may just forewarn you, we probably won't get to your report today. So we may have to reschedule Peter Kennedy. But Andrew, I can get you to unmute. Andrew's was inducted at our handover meeting. So I actually was lucky enough to meet him in person. It's lovely. I can't wait till we can all do this again. But Andrew, I'd like to invite you to the floor to do your classification talk for us.
Thank you so much, and truly, truly honored to be amongst you. I have to say something, and Peter, forgive me for this if I get it wrong, but looks like when I got to Canada in 2007, I actually resettled in Whitby, and I believe that we bought the house from you.
Oh.
I don't know whether it was you, but Strickland Mount?
No, I never lived on Strickland Mount.
Okay.
But
the names were exactly the same, Peter Menzies, so I thought it was you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, somebody told me there's somebody around in Whitby that looks like me, so I haven't found that person yet.
I'm going to share my short screen, my short presentation. I just prepared something brief. I was given some very clear instructions about what to talk about myself, and then the Rotary Club that I'm coming from briefly. So I will try to do that. I hope. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So just briefly saying that I'm the 5th of 13 children in a family, some father and some mother. And so it kind of reminds me of an African saying that when you're far from a tree, when you're far from a forest, you see it crowded and disorganized, but when you get in it, you actually find that each tree has its place. So in a family of 13, and both parents being elementary school teachers in a rural part of Uganda, poverty was more or less a natural thing for us. Surviving was a kind of day-to-day thing. There was no certainty about future. So each child had to find a place to contribute to the family. And that's why I was talking about the forest and the trees kind of thing. My parents both retired, but since their retirement in 2001, they've never received their pension. So it gives you an idea. My parents would take an average of 6 months every time without getting any pay. And so we kind of survived differently, but they continued in service. And so I live here now in Canada with my wife, and we have a son, 2.5 years now. In as far as my education is concerned, I think I learned a lot from how the community treated us as a family and me as a person. My education was partly funded by me working. I started digging in people's gardens when I was about 8 years old to make a living and support my mother. My father was always on the run, partly because of land conflicts and a few other things local to my country, but he continued to teach anyway, wherever he went, and then he would send money whenever he gets it. And so the community supported us. And then when I got to secondary school, it was about 9 kilometers away from home. Occasionally I would run through, but sometimes I would get a very goodwill person who is riding a bicycle. There's a particular farmer who used to pass that route, and he would make sure that he waits for me and he carries me through to where my school was, and he dropped me off. And so that community goodwill is what supported me through most of the good, tough times. When I got to the university through that, and I would say the education system in Uganda is a bit different. Uganda is 92 countries, sorry. But the education system is term-based in the elementary school level, and so and secondary school as well. So there are 3 terms in a year. And so because of lack of school fees, I would make sure that I only wait until the 3rd term. So I spend the 1st and 2nd terms making money, so I can pay for school for the 3rd term, so I can sit the exams and pass to the next class. But I was fortunate that when I got to university level admission, I passed well, and I was admitted to do medicine. But because it was a scholarship, I also tagged along social services, so I did the 2 together. And the reason why I was interested in social sciences was my brother did it. And he would talk about things that were not very clear to me, but they kind of spoke to some of the challenges that we had as a family. And so I did social sciences to try and understand the interaction between the individual and the society, just so I can also contribute more meaningfully from that informed place. And then I did my master's in epidemiology and biostatistics focus. And then I completed my PhD in biomedical engineering, but focused on gene signaling or genetics, really, looking at it that way. And my current work here is I'm a senior manager in charge of clinical programs at a primary care facility here in Toronto, and also doing part-time clinical research. So as you would see from my background, I delayed learning about Rotary Club, but once I did, the core values of Rotary Club and its outlook to the future was something that I found myself naturally relating to. My family values and how my family raised me and the way the community supported me taught me a lot to give back. I spent a lot of my life professionally and also as a youth volunteering in the communities. At least that is one thing I learned, that I didn't have to have much to give, that the little that I have, I can share. And so we kind of grew up doing that, that you don't have to have a lot in stock to be able to share. So that's kind of the value that moved me forward. And I think also the other piece is my faith. My parents are very Christian, very religious. And so they grounded us in that. I always tell myself that if God is an illusion, he worked for me. He carried me through those difficult times by dreaming about things beyond what I could deal with as a human. And so for me, my faith helped me carry through, and it helped me also in my ministry as or my missions as a medical professional supporting people in different parts of the world, that I found that I needed to be a merchant of hope for people who are struggling. And so packaging my skills and my capacities in different ways with people who are of like mind kind of helped me carry that mission across. So I found that those three things really helped me a lot relate to Rotary Club. And so the Rotary Club in the new place that I moved to in Sunday, actually I didn't go there physically, but we bought a place in Sunday and so connected with the local population there virtually. And I got to learn that one of the members there was actually a cousin. I've never met her, but we've been so much in touch. And she had this idea of creating a Rotary Club of Sunday. And so she talked to me about it and said, you know what, I know that I'm far away, but I think I can contribute. I do medical camps in Uganda, surgical and clinical. And we do provide free surgical services to the communities that are underserved. Healthcare in Uganda is a big problem. So I usually go with friends from here and perform surgeries for people who can't afford it. And so that's kind of the work that we do. And so I told them that that's at least something that we can do. And she told me that Rotary Club actually has healthcare, maternal and child health as one of the issues that we need to focus on. And so we started working on that and looking for resources for that. And so the provisional club then got its status on the 29th of March. It became a formal club with a membership of 125 at the time. And at the moment, because of different reasons, the membership has stabilized at 122, but they keep recruiting. So I know that they're going to exceed 130 soon again. And my role in that team at the moment is supporting the international relations as a co-director. I continue to support them in that, no longer as a member there, but just as a volunteer support person. And their outlook is to be a model club that creates lasting change for the communities that they serve and also for their membership. And the way that they're looking at it is really looking at how to feed the needs of the membership. And they have done this by creating social networks and divided themselves up into buddy groups of about 12. And so the numbers continue growing that way. They do kind of just raffle selection of who belongs to what club, and then the clubs form the buddy groups, then name themselves according to what they feel will be their emblem and so on and so forth. And then communication, they have a group WhatsApp. And I'll tell you that by morning, every time by morning when I wake up to about 140 WhatsApp messages. So it's a very vibrant, very communicative group, sometimes too much. Yeah, and so different members have really taken on identifying and addressing local needs. One of the biggest issues at the moment, especially after the lockdown, is food insecurity. So some members have taken on just doing things they can do on their own. Like I say, you don't have to have much to help. And so some people have kind of used their salaries, their benefits, and whatever the contributions they have to buy a bag of kosher here and there and give a neighbor. But they mostly identify people who are really struggling. A number of them are widowed and living with grandchildren, lots of grandchildren, like the person here. He has about 13 children that he's taking care of, and he's a single parent. And so they usually support this kind of individuals. And then the other is there's that shared learning, taking from professional sources, but also other sources, like in this case, looking at the spiritual aspect of mental health. And so they kind of call and invite different speakers every time to replenish the team's knowledge. And they also do a lot of community-based activities, again, identifying local needs and addressing them. And within the team, they usually have a number of professionals across the board, accountants, lawyers, and so on and so forth, medical professionals. So they do kind of take lead roles in organizing different events to serve the community. And then, of course, there's this other one where nobody has to be a professional at it. You just need to have the time and commitment to do some work in the community. The team has also lost quite a number of members. There's a time that we had at least 3 deaths of either family member or a very close relative to a family of a member, and sometimes even the Rotary Club members dying. And so these are just examples of some of the club members who passed on. And so usually the team would again grieve together, spend times together, sharing that. And then the last bit of it is they also would take a bit of time to, have a good time. They found that it's an essential part of thriving. And so you work hard, but you also play hard, kind of thing, as they say. And they do recognize that leader. They did recognize that leader about 2 days ago. The team itself organizing and giving a plaque because of the really distinguished leadership. So that's what I would share about Sunday Rotary Club. They want to have partnership with us at Bowmanville, and I've spoken to Peter, to Joe about it. They're interested in having cross-learning sessions as well, whenever it is possible, to log on and listen to us do our work, and also invite us to do the same. So when the time is right, we can invite the president to talk to us, and she will also host us when that is possible. Yeah, that's what I would share about myself and the club I'm coming from. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Andrew. We're so excited to have you as part of our club, and their loss is our gain, that's for sure. But I know you'll still be involved with them as well. John, quickly, please. John, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say it sounds, oh, okay. It sounds like there's a good opportunity ahead in the future, Andrew, for a possible global grant work between Uganda. It's certainly a big possibility and looks like that as we go forward.
Excellent. Yeah, and if there's probably questions for Andrew, reach out to him. We're all members together, so I know it's a bit busy this morning. I do want to take a quick minute, Doriana, just to pass it over to you. Jennifer, I get it. We'll see you next week. Yeah, Doriana, if you want to fill us in a little bit. I know tonight's a big night.
Yeah, for sure. Hi, good morning, everyone. Lovely wave. So I'll keep it nice and short. I know everyone has to run. So tonight is our first big event of the drive-in at Pingles. We are super excited. So crossing fingers that the weather kind of stays on our side so that we don't get rained on or anything like that. We've been working on other events. We did a lot of volunteering for We Grow Food, Life. I'm pretty sure the girls have mentioned it before. But right now we are kind of diving into all of our events because next week we also have the concert and the holistic event. And then it's kind of going after tonight. It's kind of having a big trickle effect of events. So we're pretty stoked and really excited. So I just quickly summed it up because I know everyone needs to run and do their thing this morning. So it was lovely to see everyone's faces and smiles, and hope to see everyone in person soon.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks, Doriana. I know you guys have been all over social media. You're doing a fantastic job. So yeah, so hopefully the rain will hold out. The weather will be good for us tonight. So yeah. Andrew, do you also have our quote?
I do. It says, "You will achieve more in this world through acts of mercy than through acts of retribution." That's by Nelson Mandela.
Very good. Excellent. And it's my final thoughts for today. We do one quick announcement. We're working on in-person meetings. We're reaching out. So hopefully we'll have some more information by that in the next coming weeks. Yeah, I don't know if is there any other announcements? No? Okay. All right. So kind of what I was going on with something Andrew said, which kind of rings true. It's the quote from Theodore Roosevelt, do what you can with what you have, where you are. It's all we can do. So be healthy, stay well, everybody. And thank you for running. We're running a little late, but we will see you guys, if not tonight at the movies, then next week. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Bill.
Bye. Big Witch Peter.
Thank you. Thank you very much.